How cool would it be to be able to see different parts of the world while doing stints as a substitute teacher? To get a taste of a school, city, and country without the longer-term commitment? To travel light and scratch that itch for adventure? These are some of the aspects of international substitute teaching that have long appealed to me. However, I've learned through interviewing Nadine Tyro, owner of the True Teaching Recruitment Agency, who also operates the subbing branch known as the Flying Squad, that the process is not as straightforward as I may once have thought. Hi, and welcome to Educators Going Global, where we invite aspiring and veteran international educators to expand their knowledge of all things related to international education. My name is Audrey. My co-host David and I bring almost 50 years of combined experience teaching overseas to the table. In this episode, we'll address the questions you and I may have about what is involved with applying for and fulfilling long-term subbing positions internationally. We hope you'll come away with a better understanding of what's involved, just as I have, and that you'll reach out to Nadine when you feel you're ready to fly with the squad.
Hello there, Nadine. As I was saying off mic, we've been talking a couple years about doing this interview on the world of international subbing, and it's about to happen, so this is super awesome.
Woohoo!
Yay! Let's start with where in the world are you?
Hi, I'm actually in New Zealand at the moment, but I work also from my base in Thailand. So I'm sometimes in this part of the world and sometimes in Thailand. It's easier in Thailand, obviously, with the time zones, but I'm comfortable working out of both places.
All right. You get around like a lot of us, and Thailand is always number one in my list for anyone talking about whatever they're doing. I do a minimal of work, so I'm not really in that category. All right. So let's see if you've got a going global story for us.
In terms of the temporary placements with international subbing, I first became aware of it when I was at an international conference in Cannes. And I remember going around the vendors and noticing this table that was dedicated specifically to short-term international subbing. And it was really the first time that I had come across this, and it sort of stuck in my mind. I had a very long career in international education, starting from teaching, going right through to executive position with the Abu Dhabi Education Council. And then after leaving that, I was introduced to recruitment. And as such, spent a couple of years working for a very large recruitment company out of London, and became their business development manager in the Asia area. And then decided after a while that, I think I could do this myself, because, the grey hairs were really starting to come in there. And I was thinking, perhaps I don't want to move about quite as much as I have done in the past. And perhaps I need to look at something that's going to be a revenue stream. And it was going to use my background and skill set and a way also of sort of keeping in touch with international education, which was my first love. So I set up a True Teaching company, and at first our core business was the longer term, which we call the signature service, which is your sort of 1 year to 3 year type gig. After a while, I noticed that there was a whole pool of really great teachers out there who weren't interested in longer-term placements any longer. They were incredibly experienced, both internationally and in terms of their subject knowledge and their background. And they perhaps had gone back to their home countries and just decided, I wouldn't mind doing a stint here and there, 3 months, 6 months, up to a year sometimes. But I don't really want to be hampered with a longer term contract at the moment. So I thought, okay, I really need to tap into this. And that's when my idea for the flying squad came about. It was actually quite quickly after the origins of true teaching. It only really took a couple of years before this became a thing. And so I had a logo made for the flying squad, and they remained on the database. But depending on whether, because many of Flying Squad members may also be interested in longer term placements as well as short term, they're fairly flexible. So those candidates typically stay active on the database. Those candidates that are only interested in short term placements are hidden, so they're inactive. That means that schools who are eligible to go onto the database and look won't find them. So this is why I say to schools, you need to contact me, because then I will contact candidates directly and I will find you a short list and I will send them to you. So that's basically how that origin story came about.
I love that story. I really appreciate your awareness of what was going on around you and then your courage to say, well, that's a cool idea. I'm going to put that into play because, as a life coach, I've had to try to be entrepreneurial and it's really a challenge for me. So really impressed that you went ahead and took your dream and made it reality and got yourself a new income stream. And that's awesome. So good on you. And it's a service that some schools are, really going to need and appreciate when something happens and they suddenly are in need of a long-term sub. So that's very cool story. Thank you. Well, let's head over to our guiding question, which is, how does one go about getting a long-term subbing gig at an international school? And we will start with a preliminary sub-question of, your main gig, I take it, is educator recruitment through True Teach, even now. Of your available educator positions, roughly what portion would you say are interested in the temporary positions?
It's grown. It's grown remarkably, actually. And it's grown beyond those teachers who perhaps were 55 and above, who were either semi-retired or retired. It's grown to where I'll almost say it's almost half of my business now. Yeah.
Wow.
And because COVID has changed the whole landscape of international recruitment, it really has. There are so many other ways now that schools can recruit. They can. So really, you have to think on your feet to be able to survive. I can see the advent of AI coming into existence, and small agencies such as myself are now really focusing on that very personalised service, that hand-holding, that I'm here for you, I'm here whenever you need me, and working at that level which they sometimes don't get from other bigger agencies. And they know that if they've got an emergency or even a planned absence that they're filling, that I will go above and beyond to find the person for them. So making sure that I do try to fill those positions for them, that helps to build my reputation in that way, and they'll keep coming back time and time again, which they do. Yeah.
I'm curious to what you would attribute this increase in people that are interested in doing the short term. You said things changed in terms of recruiting with COVID. In what way did that lead to this increase in people wanting the short term?
Well, I guess a lot of people were pretty much stuck in countries over COVID. And It meant that they had very little contact with their immediate families. They were used to being able to fly back home at least once a year. Whereas if you're in countries like China or India, or, others we could name. They were unable to leave the country. They just simply had no job. There was no job for them when they went to their own country. There would be no way they could re-enter the host country to get back to their school. So I think that really changed the landscape a lot for some people. They felt that they were safer being back in their country and being able to do perhaps short stints. And, but also I think it's also tapping into those people who are semi-retired or retired as well, and looking at the nature of immigration authorities in different countries, because that's changing all the time. Some countries are becoming extremely prescriptive in terms of what they will allow and when. And schools becoming creative too in ways in which they can get teachers or educators in for short stints of time. So it's like the sands in the desert. It just keeps on, changing, overnight sometimes. And you've just got to sort of be aware of what's happening. But there's an increase in people who are interested in short term, but that doesn't mean to say that we're going to use everybody, because not everybody adjust in the right way. And it's devastating if you get a teacher who's, taking over from another teacher because of an emergency situation, and they just can't handle the situation. It's devastating, particularly if you've got a kindergarten class, for instance, where they've had that bond with the teacher's gone, another teacher comes in, and her surroundings, she just can't seem to assimilate, it just doesn't work. So, not everybody is a short-term sub. Not everybody is an international educator.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. So one thing that also brings to mind is that there are so many new schools popping up all the time. So it feels like that growing list, to a large extent, you will be able to accommodate. Is that accurate to say?
Yes. It's like a huge, highly layered onion out there in terms of the difference between the different kinds of schools. I think information is empowerment, and I am trying to be as totally honest as I can, both with the candidate and the school. I just turned somebody down who would have been ideal, who looked on paper to have been ideal for a position in Africa. But because of one or two comments she made to me, in getting back, I said, no. And I said this to the head. I said, I'm not sending someone to you who's going to light a flame, and you don't need that. You've just had this hiccup. The kids have had this hiccup. You don't need this. You don't need to be dealing with anything else. So it's not about money to me. It's about reputation. I've got to put someone in there who's going to fill a void. And I'm an educator, so students come first for me. And I understand myself just how kids feel when they lose a teacher, particularly overseas. It's a community, it's a family when you're in an international school, and you've got to gel. You've got to have the right personality to be able to move in there, gel with children, bring them along, give them confidence in yourself and in your teaching and learning ability, and and be part of the whole family of the school as well. It's not an easy thing to do. Sounds wonderful, subbing internationally. Not everybody's equipped for it.
Well, and it sounds like clearly your reputation is the most important thing. That makes so much sense. You want people to keep coming back. I'm curious, you've already indicated that sometimes you have to turn a candidate down. I'm wondering if you've ever turned a school down as a client. Is that ever, and don't mention any names, but have you ever had to do that?
Yes, I have. If I've had some bad feedback from more than one source, yes, I have. And, for various reasons. But the beauty of having your own business or being your own boss is that you can make those decisions. And if I feel that their heart isn't in the right place, if the bottom line means more than student learning, and taking care of staff, taking care of educators. That's what your whole community is about, is your quality of education that you're offering. If there is, evidence to suggest that they just don't care, then I'm not really interested in sending good people there. Yeah. Mm.
Well, it's wonderful to hear that you have the client teacher's best interests in mind, as well as the client schools. So it sounds like you're just the kind of person that should be doing this, offering this service. So thank you for what you do.
That's okay.
Yes, and so much nuance here. And Audrey, we're on a roll. We're getting interview after interview with the inside scoop and
Yes.
really explaining all that goes into certain situations. So I'm very appreciative, and this is why we were so curious. I also want to mention one of the big themes we've been covering is the pivoting out of international education and what are people's options. And we've covered that when we've been on other people's podcasts. We cover it in our own. And you're a great example of someone leaving the international education field to start a business, which is a big one. And then we've had on like Jacqueline Millay, who are consultants, which really fits into the theme you're talking about of personalized service. When I'm out there on all the forums and different places reading what's happening in these different schools, the ups and the downs, it's perplexing and how difficult it can be. And I think if I was out there now as a 30-year-old trying to get a job, I would want that hand-holding service. I'd want a consultant like Jacqueline to really help me. And then, as Audrey was pointing out, there's that echelon of schools that don't have the same values that we have as educators that have gone through the systems with mission statements and follow up, really focusing on students and families. But some of them are focused on the bottom line and are not mission driven. And it's great to hear that that's another area that you're aware of, because when I get on the forums, I'm seeing in the last 2 months people leaving schools. And I'm going, how are they going to fill those spots? So that comes into play as well. All right, well, let's move on to kind of what most people think of as one of the biggest reasons why schools need long-term subs, and that would be maternity or medical leave. And what are the most common other needs that drive the demand for long-term substitutes? What are other reasons why schools would call you up?
Schools are about people. And when you're in an international environment somewhere, something's going to be happening to somebody at home, somebody's loved ones. There's no getting away from it. We're not an island. We've got, aging parents. We've got a whole plethora of people in our lives that mean a great deal to us, and anything can happen at any time. There's also situations, for instance, like Myanmar, when you'll get, perhaps you're in a war zone for a while or potentially in a war zone, and people make the decision for themselves in that aspect. And they should. You should never push anybody, to sign any contract anywhere. But largely it can also be a matter of perhaps government advisors saying that you should not be moving to this country, living in this country. It could come down to insurance. Insurance agencies will not provide insurance in certain areas. So therefore, teachers will make the decision, this is too risky, I'm out of here. So there's a whole, basket of reasons why a school might be looking for educators. At the moment, I have been filling positions in Erbil in Iraq / Kurdistan, if you like. And I've sent 3 teachers there recently. It means largely that I've encouraged them to take flying squad people because their students deserve top educators too. They deserve to have quality of education in the time that those people are prepared to spend there. And the 3 that I've sent there have been prepared to stay there until the end of June. So they've been leaving roundabout now and heading there. So, obviously, places like Iraq who have, there's all sorts of preconceived ideas, from within our lifetimes about life there, and justified. But I've done my homework on Erbil, and Erbil is, a very safe city. But they do advise, government advisories do advise that people do not go outside of the city. So, yeah, you're taking in those kind of risk factors. I set up with schools, I call it an initial chat, because I don't really want them asking a lot of questions of me. Yes, I've travelled extensively, but that can be outdated pretty quickly. I mean, I'm sort of fairly risk averse, really. I lived in Papua New Guinea, for instance, for 10 years. So I've lived in various places. But, I'm me. I'm not somebody else. And so they need to talk to the source. And then I encourage teachers, talk to the administrator at the school, have your questions, ask to talk to a teacher at the school who's in a similar situation to you, talk to them about what day-to-day life is like. What do their apartment look like? Do they have good internet access? Can they walk down to the what is a grocery store there? Where do you get, the things that you need? Talk to them, start feeling, as if you're in control, you feel confident about it. That's fairly important. So not every short-term placement is equal. I sent someone last year to the Ukraine. He was an American. He had the right mindset. He had connections already in Ukraine, and he didn't have that level of anxiety that perhaps other people quite rightly felt. So, horses for courses. He had a great experience. And, word coming back from Erbil is that, they're having a great experience too. But, I've just sent somebody to the Falkland Islands, a math teacher who's just arrived there. Largely, it's not an international school. It's a local school. Yeah. Sent people regularly to St. Helena off the west coast of Africa. Again, a really different experience. And so, people who are looking for short term are sometimes, you're looking for different reasons, but people who go to these places are also looking for an adventure. One of the ones who went to Erbil, she's a kindergarten teacher, and she wanted to retire. And then she wrote to me and she said, I think she's 55 and she lives with her husband who's a little older. And she said, I'm really bored. I had her in Erbil, well, I had her with a signed contract a week later. So, she was off, she was from the Netherlands, so, and living in Spain. So, yeah, you can't really pin down somebody necessarily, but I just love it when they have that sense of adventure and they're just going to give it a try, and they give lovely feedback and photographs, and when they go and they have when they have that attitude, they lift the place too. I said, you take your experience and your skills and you lift that school up a little, because, you impart whatever you can in the time that you're there. And they're good teachers. They're very good teachers. So it's a joy for me. I get a kick out of it.
And that's very evident. And you just hit on a key word, adventure, and you're starting to build out the profile. We're going to talk more about that in just a second, of who these people are. And that's super cool when you're talking about veteran international educators that have, like yourself, that have been in very interesting places, but maybe not as comfortable. And they have that spirit to say, I want more. Or maybe they are in their 30s, they went back to their home countries and they're taking a sabbatical, but they want a little bit of time to get out and try things again. And then you're hitting on that population like Mark Forgeron, Audrey's husband, who went back to his home country and said, nope, I want more. I want more of that good international lifestyle. So let me ask you one more, because we had Mark Weber on. We really are hitting a theme of very personalized recruiting services.
Okay.
Mark works in Latin America. Okay. And what he said is, on the positive side, some schools get extra enrollment they weren't planning on.
That's true.
So could you talk to that a little
Yeah.
bit?
Well, yeah, it does work that way a little bit. And I'd say since COVID, it's been schools have they've been learning year by year, softly, with enrolment because they really don't know what's going to happen. And so they get back and they have an influx of certain grade levels, and they want specialised teachers in. So they'll very often look at the flying squad because I say better to take somebody for short term rather than take somebody that isn't really a perfect fit, a good fit, and better to give yourself time to select from a larger pool of educators, and that's what they do. So they might take somebody from August through to December, through to the holiday period, and come January, they will have already found somebody who could take a longer term contract. So yeah, that happens. That happens as well. You'll also find that schools have contracted. So, you'll find that they have overhired. So, they have teachers that need to find a job, and they need to find one quickly because they've been hired, but they're no longer needed. And I've had 2 or 3 of those at the beginning of this year. So the school might have gotten into financial difficulties, and so they're letting them go. And that's also a scenario. So they're prepared to take something short term or long term. They're prepared to take what comes along that they think will give them employment until they're ready to commit to somewhere else.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. It's along the lines of an interim head of school. Do you give
Yeah.
yourself time to really find the right person?
Planned absences are the best because that gives you time, a maternity or paternity leave. That's a better scenario because it gives you time to really look, and you've got possibilities are more solid in terms of the numbers of people that you can access. At a very short term, you've got to remember that people who have said that they're going to be on your database for short term and are available are also available on other websites with other agencies and with their local school board authorities. They'll say, look, I've just committed to the school down the road for 3 or 4 months, I'll be available in January. So you just don't know. And so this is why I need to go through the lists, and the lists are getting quite long. And I've got to look at each particular person. I've got to read, because I write notes on profiles that candidates can't see. We have an online automated service, so they build an online identity, an online profile, and part of it allows me to write notes, and so I'm able to, as soon as an educator tells me that they're not going to be available from such and such a time because they're working at their local school, then I'll write that on there so I won't bother them again. I'll go through the line and I keep looking and I look for my notes and I see. So I'm really only reaching those people that there is a possibility that they will be able to pack their bag, roll their sleeves up, get on a plane and get there.
It's just fascinating, and it's so much more individualized than I'd really pictured.
It is.
I just love that you.
It really, it is. And I look at some teachers and I think, this is not the school for you. This is not the experience for you. This is not going to work, And it's you don't want to put people in an unhappy situation. Unhappy teachers, unhappy students. You've got to try it. I'm like a matchmaker. That's what I do.
That's what I was thinking too, like a dating service.
That's what I do. So I do have to have a feel. Like yourselves, I've been in international education for a long time, over 40 years. And so, you get a feel for the community, the sector that you're working in. And so it's not as difficult as it might seem, but you're trying to make sure that educators have a positive experience. You're not going to throw them into something that is, their experience, sure, but you're not going to throw them into a situation that is just going to be more challenging than it's worth. So, it is like a dating service. It's like putting, matching school with person. It is very individualized, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, speaking of the candidate's readiness and appropriateness, if you will, to be matched with a school, what are some of the key professional and personal characteristics that make a teacher an ideal candidate for a long-term international subbing role? You've sort of indicated ready to roll up their sleeves and jump is one thing, and a spirit of adventure is another. Are there any common misconceptions candidates have about the skills required and whether they would be someone that could potentially be on the flying squad list?
Well, I think you have to be very open-minded. You have to be culturally sensitive. You have to have been exposed to various cultures and various religions within schools. I can remember a situation where a teacher went into a school in Sharjah and complained to the students in the school about the call to prayer. Interfering with the lesson. And this is so bad. So really, it's very important to have a cultural, religious sensitivity if you're going to be working overseas or working with people. And to be open to being a little bit part of the community, not sort of just hiding yourself away in an apartment in between going backwards and forwards to school. I suppose just being inquisitive and wanting to learn as much as you possibly can in the time that you're there. And so I think that's really important. When you become a flying squad member, it's no point in saying to me, I only want to go to Morocco.
Right.
I've had this sort of thing. I say, no, if you're on the flying squad, you're an experienced international teacher. Within reason, you have to be a little bit more open-minded in terms of where you're prepared to go. I'm not going to send you anywhere where I know you're going to not have a fulfilling time, but you're going to make up your mind as well. But just be a little bit open in terms of where you'll go. And so being a little bit that way will open up many more possibilities and opportunities for you. If you're too narrow in terms of what you're going to do and where you're going to go, you might as well not register, really, because you can't use somebody who's that blinkered. Yeah. So a little bit that way. I think just people who are lifelong learners, really, just people who are, still inquisitive, still have a sort of sense of adventure. I always said, as soon as I'm comfortable somewhere, I'm uncomfortable. I have to go. I have to move, I have to do something different. And I think a lot of international educators are a little bit like that. Many of them are. And so I think when they do sort of either semi-retire or whatever, they are looking at other avenues and looking at what's out there, what they can do. And gratefully, the options have grown in terms of what people can do that's not necessarily just in a classroom.
Right. Do you ever have someone just show up who has completely gotten the wrong end of the stick and just doesn't get it beyond, I only want to go to Morocco? Are there any other sort of common misconceptions people have?
Most of the people that I work with, I would say 99% of the people that register for the flying squad, because there is a process of registration. And there is a process of uploading your CV it's for a timely feedback. So it gives me a chance to look at a CV as well and get an appreciation for a person. And if they're interested, then I'll start a communication with them. I'll talk to them sometimes. And if I get an idea that they're not really equipped for this, they don't really have the background, they think it's a really nice idea, they think it's a little bit like globetrotting, that they're going to be, going from here there. No, that's not going to work. So apart from that, yes, it's just sort of knowing that someone's not going to go in there and just checking that there's no red flags before somebody moves out. But largely, 99% of teachers that I work with are just absolutely delightful. I mean, really, really lovely and very accommodating. When I hear back from a school that someone hasn't been accommodating, that's a red flag for me, because I build a relationship both with the candidates and with the school. So as much as I will react if a school has treated someone poorly, I will react to if a teacher has not been as professional as they could be in that situation and has caused more anxiety than the situation calls for. And therefore, I probably wouldn't work with them again. Yeah. And I have reacted to that, but I understand, and I get them to do as much homework as possible, because I wouldn't ever push anybody into it. And as soon as they come back and they'll say, no, I won't go to such and such a place because da, 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 you have to accept that reason. You never push anybody and try and encourage them to think otherwise, because you're heading for disaster. It's just not worth doing anything like that. Yeah, people know themselves, and you have to accept that not everybody is like me. Will just jump in there and go, I'm just so jealous, I would go to herbal in a heartbeat. But I have to accept, people aren't all like me. Yeah.
Well, let me interject on that, and then I've got a more academic skills. So let's say you've got candidates who've been at very comfortable posts, just very comfortable cities, housing's taken care of, great health insurance, and they're excited about going to a potential part of the world that might be more, we'll call it, adventuresome. I'm guessing you've got to help them hold the mirror up a little bit to say you really haven't experienced it, right?
No, and I've been that person. I mean, I've been in schools where I have been surrounded by teachers who have had a very comfortable existence. Excellent teachers, though. I mean, they've chosen to stay where they are. Over time, though, typically you will find they have travelled, and they do have an appreciation of different cultures and different places. I'd say they really do have to have a very solid grip of their subject expertise, and so that part's really easy for them. They're used to the international school environment. They're used to reaching out for resources. They're used to communicating with heads of department, with deputies, with whatever, to make sure that they have got ahead of time what they need. The delivery is not a problem, and the content is not a problem. They can switch from, say, an American curriculum, from AP to A-levels to diploma. Yeah, they're that kind of people. And yes, they may have been, because, I use a lot of these people that I know because I talk with them. So they know what I do. And I've sent them to places, and I know they're rock solid. I don't even have a second thought about sending them to a place, because I understand the nature of those people too. And I know how generous spirited they were, how dedicated they were, how they travel very often. I knew that some of them had had a life before. So they might have been in Cairo, they might have been in Lebanon, they might have been, wherever, Israel, they might have been anywhere. There's not that many people that are in that situation that can't adapt very readily, because the very nature of the reason that they went overseas was because they had a mindset that they wanted something different in life than what their local country or their local area could deliver. So, they still take that with them. It's still there. They might just not be as adventurous as the next person, but they still have the ability to adapt. They still have that cultural sensitivity. They still have, empathy. They still have a desire to meet different kinds of people. They're still very diplomatic. It can still work. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, it can still work. Yet as I sit here and I think of all the different schools I've been in, there have been folks that have gotten so comfortable that they've lost perspective on what a normal school, and in working as a counselor, talking about Susie or Johnny speaking out of turn or little things, and it becomes a big thing, and it's like, come on, get real here. So that's just one thing. That's more towards people listening and thinking, can I do this? And if you've been at a really comfortable place for a long time and they're going to talk to you and you're going to unpack that for sure. So let's move now into logistics, the whole nuts and bolts of once they agreed to make the move, what's going to happen with visas, housing, flight reimbursement, salary, health insurance. And I'm going to ask a couple follow-up questions, but let's start with that and maybe differentiate it from someone who signs a 2-year contract, if you would.
Not so much different, really, because you're still working with immigration and education authorities. Some schools within an area might have creative ways that they're able to bring people in quickly. It might be the relationship that the proprietor has with government officials or with government. It really is a mixed bag in terms of what can happen. Some schools might be able to bring them in on a business visa. Some schools might be able to bring them in as a consultant for however long. Typically, no. The schools that do tend to be able to bring them in have ways and means of being able to do it. Otherwise, they wouldn't contact me, What I do say is that once the discussion starts and once the school has made a decision, because of course they'll go through a filtering process too. They might have 2 or 3 people they're talking to. I'm usually sending them through pretty strong candidates, and it's typically my candidates that they take because they've already been through a filtering process with me. Their schools know this. They know that anyone that I send to them is going to have, a fairly strong background in international education, and they're going to be able to stand on their merit and stand on their background. But once the school has offered you either a verbal or a written contract, listen to what HR tell you, because policies change so rapidly. I can't keep up with every country in terms of what's happening with immigration and in terms of what governments are saying about short-term contracts or just contracts for expatriate workers. That keeps changing. Age groups, all kinds of stuff changes. So I always say, listen to what HR say. You make sure you ask the right questions. If they tell you to do something, you do it, because they know exactly. They have their ear to the ground. They know what's happening within their country and within the policies that are coming through. They're there to keep abreast of all of that. So what they're telling you to do, you need to listen and you need to follow through.
You've painted the picture well. We all know there are certain countries where connections are everything.
Yes.
And you're going to be able to work with the government to get things done.
Yeah.
And then the opposite end is where it's government regulations and you follow whatever they say. So this is kind of an unfair question, but in general, what kind of timeline should a flying squad member who said, okay, I want to go to that school, sign me up? Is there a way to generalize on how long that can take to get onto the ground of that new country?
Depends, yeah. I would say I don't send too many flying squad people through to China because the process of getting a work visa is lengthy. And also, this is what I need to mention too, has nothing really to do with race or whatever, but when they're choosing somebody at short notice, schools and education authorities, immigration authorities, they're going to be able to get a work visa much more quickly if you've got an American, a Canadian, a British, a New Zealand, an Australian, and South African visa. South African less so, but the others, yes. Yeah. So, and the same with now because of Brexit, with the European community, whereas they might have been able to take a plethora of different nationalities, for instance, at the American school in Milan, they might be able to take, if you're in New Zealand or if you're an Australian, if you're whatever. But if they want somebody in there to take over an examination class in a hurry, they want you to have an EU background, because that's what's needed to make a very smooth transition and get that person there straight away. So they don't want to have any hiccups at all. They don't want any roadblocks. They want that person in the classroom. So they're saying to you, with this short term, they've got to have an EU passport or the ability to work within Italy. Same with Germany, same with many of the other EU countries. So you're working with these kinds of constraints as well. So it's not always the most experienced person out there. I'm digging to see if I can find the best possible fit I possibly can with an EU passport. So it's not easy, and sometimes I can be sitting down there for 6, 7, 8 hours non-stop, putting everything else aside, trying to find that teacher, just trying to find them for every means possible. And yeah, it's become harder and harder in terms of being able to do that. So it's not necessarily always an easy thing to do. So I try to get as many people on from Europe now as I possibly can and encourage them to sign up, because I know that at short notice for Europe, I'm going to need people with EU passports. Not all the time, not for your long-term contracts, because, when they've got time to get through immigration, they'll take you from, whatever nationality background you come from. But if they need to get you in there at short notice, then they're going to want that passport to do it quickly.
So from start to finish, a school reaches out and says, we need someone.
Yeah.
How quickly
can I do it? It really depends. I'm stuck at the moment with a school in Zambia to find the right person for them. This doesn't happen to me very often. Usually I will find somebody if necessary, but sometimes for some reason every year you get a subject that is in short supply, and it changes. 1 year it might be counsellors, another year it might be maths, another year it might be music teachers. It just doesn't make sense very often. And then you'll find that teachers at the last minute are trying to find them, even for short periods of time. So it often isn't easy, and it could take a very long time to try and locate them. They're not just necessarily on my database. I go beyond that. I go well beyond that to find the people I'm looking for. So that's my go-to as a first, the active database, and then I go to the inactive database just in case there's somebody out there who is sort of sitting at the kitchen table with the coffee in their hand thinking, I'm done with this weather, and I managed to get them on the right day at the right time. But if I can't at that stage, I'm going outside of that. I'm going to my social media contacts, and in LinkedIn alone, I have almost 30,000. So I'm targeting, and I'm taking hours to do it. Yeah.
Okay, so you've got the school and you've got the candidate.
How long?
Person. Then how long does it take?
It depends on the country. It depends on their background. For instance, if they're in Europe and they've got an EU passport, it's going to be very quick, provided they're willing. Like someone that I hired last year in France who had a job at the American school in Milan. Within sort of 2-3 weeks, she was there in the classroom. But then someone else, like Desiree, who's a math teacher from the United States, she was going to the Falkland Islands for the math teacher. It's taken a long time. I would say it's taken 2 months or more to get her there. So it really just depends on the processes that they have with it at a government level and within the school level. Whether it's an international school, a local international school, a government school, it can be extremely frustrating. But gratefully, teachers are prepared to stick in there and keep going. I often admire them for their tenacity, because they really are interested in getting there, and they're amazing.
Awesome. Well, yes, I can see where the answer is. It depends.
Unfortunately, yes. It's not a short answer. Yeah.
Right. But it's good to nail down some of the so 2 to 3 weeks can happen, and then a few months can be the what happens.
Can be.
Yeah. So if somebody was considering signing up, what are some of the positives and negatives that a candidate needs to be aware of with the subbing gig?
Well, I don't know from any one day what's going to come across my desk, basically. I don't know where it's going to come, from whom it's going to come, for what roles they're looking for. And I'm saying that if you rely on subbing as an income stream, you need to have something else going. You need to have another gig going, because, it's not guaranteed. So if you're looking at sort of having one placement, followed by another, probably by another one. That would probably be outside my agency. That probably wouldn't happen within my agency. You would need to be enrolled perhaps in your local area as well, so that you would be getting local schools as well as international schools. Typically, these people have a life, and it's not all just teaching either. So don't rely on it as your income stream. If you still need to have a steady income stream, don't rely on international subbing. Within international education, we all know you've got those teachers that move in and out of schools far too regularly. We're never going to use those for subbing. They're really cutting themselves off from many quality experiences in international education as well, because they won't be picked up by the schools that will take care of their staff, number one, and offer them a really professional experience where they care about them and they care about looking after their staff, because they can see that is the engine of a school, and without good quality, happy, contented educators, they're not going to have that quality of content delivery that they need. So I guess that's important. I would say that beyond just the adventure, I think it's a sort of a sense of, as you get older, as you know, you start becoming, you start sort of wondering what you get up for each day. You have to have a sense of a purpose in life. And once you retire and you're not getting up regularly, you've got the skills that you've built up over time. You've got all of this experience. You've got loads and loads of compassion and patience, and educators in their 60s and 70s to an extent, they're a gold mine. They're not looking at climbing any great ladder anymore. They just want to give back. They just enjoy being in the classroom, and they just enjoy working with kids, and they want that stimulation. And so I think for many teachers who have retired, it is a way of saying, I matter. I still make a difference. There is a purpose for me. And so I think beyond the adventure, there's that as well, is that sense of fulfillment. And that's important, I think, to a lot of people. So, there's that side of it. You're giving back as well. You are lifting up a school when you take all of that experience into a school. You're giving back, and you're happy to do so. So you're taking on a lot of probably things that matter to you. You might be taking a sports team. You might be involved with other sort of community endeavours, and you're grasping all of that experience you've had in various schools and good, quality schools, that you're able to help a school along their journey. So there's that part of it. So again, it's that sort of sense of fulfillment, sense of purpose. The bad side of it, I can't see too many bad sides. I don't really hear of too many teachers that have had an unhappy experience in a school. I really can't think of any necessarily. I have heard, one or two have sort of said, when we got there, the workload was a lot more. They seem to, obviously because they're very experienced, they seem to sort of load them up a little bit. And so that can be disappointing if a school does that, because that's not carrying through with what the contract was. And so, I've had one or two instances with that. So that's made people a little bit unhappy. But largely, no, there's not too many adverse experiences that even sort of come to mind. No.
Oh, wow. So I'm sitting here in my, we call them party pants.
Yeah,
Travelers might call them elephant pants.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not wearing socks, but if I was wearing socks, I would have them knocked off with that statement. That says so much to your placement ability. Yeah, in the back of my head, I'm going, even as experienced as you can be, making that kind of transition, it really does take a special breed. And just the other night, I was out with 3 other international educators, just reminding them of how different we can be. And we've spoken so many times on the attributes, the character strengths, the dispositions that make international educators very special. And this kind of leads in, and I want to ask very specifically, and before I say that, and Audrey, here it comes. PERMA. What we're talking about is positive psychology and the PERMA pillars. And I'm a broken record, but how often when you're leaving international education, whether all the way or you're doing the flying squad, you want to keep those pillars going in your life, relationships, meaning, achievement, health. It's so healthy to be out doing new things, accomplishments. So that is huge for people thinking about kind of semi-retiring and moving into this. So let's talk about the bucket that I'm in, even though I don't think I'm going to join the flying squad. I'm not sure if you'd take me.
I would definitely take you. Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Oh, you are very kind. So here's my question about the bucket of international educators who are thinking about, I want to stay overseas, but I don't want the long-term contract. I want to live in Bangkok. I want to live in Mexico City, and I want to be ready to go for 3 months or 4 months or stuff like that. Do you have many people like that they've just chosen that is kind of their transition into full retirement, and they basically maybe even stay overseas, or they could go back to their home country? What's your take on that group?
Well, schools within an international setting. I mean, if you look at ISB, if you look at, I set up Concordian in 2000, international school in Bangkok. So I know that schools have a kind of coterie of international educators that don't really want to have a full-time job. They might be a spouse, for instance, of someone working within Bangkok, even in the business sector. So they have them on tap, just as your local school does. They have substitute teachers that they will phone. And I have got a counsellor who's a flying squad who lives in Bangkok, who works for 2 or 3 schools. I've got many, actually, who are situated in Bangkok who regularly work for international schools there. But then I also have schools there that will phone because they're looking for a particular kind of background, I think, And I really don't know for what purpose, but I've sent some pretty highly qualified people to schools in Bangkok, and they might be IB educators with a track record. And that within any city like Bangkok, Beijing, any large city, that competition is fierce, that where your graduating class goes to is important in terms of marketing, etc., within the school environment. So they might have made the decision that they want somebody who's got a very long, stable, solid track record as an IB psychology teacher or whatever along those lines. And so then they'll come to me. But it's not to say that they don't have teachers that live in the local area that they phone regularly for maybe this day, 2 days, 3 days, but not for an exam class over 3 to 6 months or more, not when they need to guarantee that teacher is going to pull these kids through and that they're going to have the best possible chance of getting into whatever universities they've chosen.
I'm very happy that you've brought up that niche, because I know a couple friends, late 60s, the visa is going to get them, but they could come to a city like Bangkok or Madrid or wherever. And if the visa laws allow it in Thailand, I know they're a little bit lower. But one thing, there are places, I suspect, that will bring people on for 3 months and kind of maybe pay sideways under the table. They find ways that they don't have to change to a work visa, things like that.
There's all sorts of creative ways that people use that they may not even necessarily talk to me about. I tend to be guided by the schools. I mean, there aren't that many schools that can afford to pay for experienced educators to fly them in, to provide them with accommodation, to provide them with airfares, for healthcare, etc., to look after them. It's not every school that can afford to do that, for instance. So, you tend to get your more established schools that have very established policies and recruitment pathways that they use that will bring people in. And these are the ones that I'm sort of working with pretty regularly. Others that come on board, I'm learning along with the candidates. I'm trying to find out as much as I possibly can and get as much feedback as I possibly can. You know, somewhere like this is the first time I've sent someone to the Falkland Islands. I'm learning as it goes, you know. I'm learning about St. Helena. I'm learning about Lusaka. I'm learning about, you know, I'm learning as I go too. And then, you know, there'll be a big policy change such as that you'll have to sort of start relearning because it all changes again. So it's a fluid industry. It's a fluid sector. But largely, yes, it's not an easy thing to say that a country will take you if you're in your 60s. Yes, a country may not have an age constraint. For instance, Egypt, you can go there until you're 72. It may be a board decision, yeah, because it may have to do with insurance and the cost of insurance once you hit 60. So it may not necessarily be a ruling from a country. It may be a school board has constraints. And so the director has to work within those.
So once again, very, very individualized. Yeah.
Very individualized. You cannot, that's why I say when you ask me these questions, it's just a case of knowing, you know, who can do what and how creative they can be. And yeah, it is. It's very individualized.
Well, I think it's wonderful that you really strive to set everyone up for success, schools and teachers included. And I would venture to say, just from what I've inferred from our conversation, that it's not just about your reputation, it's also who you are. And I think it's beautiful. So I just wanted to get that out there.
That's nice. I don't balk. I mean, you know, yes, it's like it's a competitive industry and I've found my little niche in here. You know, I'm at a stage in my life where it's nice to have a secondary income stream. You know, I'm not rich and I'm not going to be. But, you know, it's nice that I can work from home. It's nice that I can work wherever there's internet so that if my daughters need my help in Brisbane, I can fly across there with my laptop and I can help look after my grandchildren and I can continue to operate. So, you know, it gives me a huge amount of flexibility. I'm able to tap into my background. I'm able to talk to people about what they can expect, why, you know, schools in the Middle East are very interested in people who have already worked in the Middle East. And, you know, I can tap into all kinds of experiences so that hopefully I can prepare people. Knowledge is power before you head anywhere. And it's been a joy. I know I have to open up my laptop every day, but I don't resent that. I don't resent it. It's something that I enjoy doing it, and I'm very blessed to be able to continue working in a sector that I loved and gave a great deal to me and my family. My two children were educated in international schools. They both graduated, one from the International School of Vienna, the other one from International School of Kuala Lumpur. So it's been a life well lived, and I've been very blessed to be able to have it. So giving back is part of what I do as well.
Wonderful. So you're also checking all the PERMA boxes, as David would say.
Yeah.
So if we were to kind of look at the whole of your experience, which, you know, once again, generalizing, and that's challenging because it's so bespoke, as you say.
Yes, yes.
What is the single, if you could come up with the single most important piece of advice you'd give to an internationally experienced teacher or administrator considering their first long-term subbing position?
Well, you're already equipped anyway. You've had international experiences. You've already got the tools in the toolbox. I think be open-minded, be resilient, and go to just enjoy that extension of what has been your life and the joy of being with students in the classroom. Just be resilient and look at it as a very positive opportunity to enjoy a different culture, even, a relatively short time. Be prepared to give back, be prepared to be part of the community, and make it a very fulfilling experience.
Wonderful. So would you go so far as to say, look to be part of it and make somewhat of an impact, but don't look to change the whole place,
Don't
because
look to
that's
change.
really going to get us problems. Yeah.
Don't look to change, no, because in the short period of time you're there, you need to be able just to blend in and make the experience as smooth for this community and for the students as you possibly can, because you're looking at outcomes education and you're there because of a situation very often. And so you want to make it as stress-free as you possibly can in terms of you moving in. So, when I say you hit the ground running, you hit the ground running. You can't be worried about, something happening. You can't be worried about understanding a culture or having a problem with some sort of cultural aspect or whatever. You just got to go in there and be you, be the good teacher that you are, and make those students feel comfortable, feel confident, and that transition is smooth, and that they're going to reap the rewards of you being part of their life for the time that you're there. So, yeah, you're giving the students confidence, you're giving the staff confidence, you're giving the parents confidence. So you're the consummate educator. Yeah.
So with all of that said, and I think people might already be able to guess the answer, but do you look at educators with no prior international teaching experience?
Very, 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 very few. And if they asked about it, I would more say you need to get in there into international education in a longer term contract, even if it's for 2 years, to get a feel, because it's just not good enough. It's not the right thing to do for students, for a school community, to have a go, just see if you like it. You can't do that. You can't do
Right.
that. You're affecting people's lives. You're affecting kids' lives. This might be their only shot of getting into the university or into the course of study that they want for their future. You can't go in there saying, I want to see if this works out. I want to see if I like this. Nah. You can't.
Right.
Yeah, you can't. No, it's too important for that. So no, I can't even think of anybody, quite frankly, Audrey. Now I'm trying to think. No, I can't think of anybody that I have sent subbing who has not had some background in international education.
That's very, very evident. It's not about you. It's about the students, the families.
It's about student learning. It's the same as when
Yes.
you're in a school. The whole thing is about, that's what the community is all about, is supporting learning. That's why you exist.
Well, this has been such an eye-opening experience where I only had a surface understanding of all the complexities, but so many truths have come through that make so much sense. And as we wrap up, what else, if anything, would you like to share?
Well, I'm saying that, I think that if you are an educator out there and you've had international teaching experience that you really enjoyed, and you enjoy being with students, enjoy being in the classroom, and would like the opportunity of being immersed in perhaps a different culture, something that you haven't experienced before, try it, just go for it, because it's within your experience base. You're going to have a tremendous sense of fulfillment, and it's using that professional expertise and knowledge base that you've gathered together your whole life, and you've got the patience and just to walk in there and just enjoy kids without too much worry about a lot of the stuff that you need to worry about when you're on a longer term contract. So I don't know of any teacher that's come back and didn't gain a lot of positive experience from any one placement that they do. And some people I've placed 2, 3, 4 times. the lady who's just gone to Erbil, this is the third time I've put her somewhere. So, yeah. Yeah,
Awesome.
it is. And it just gives me a lot of joy because you just remember yourself when you went to a new country, when you went to a new school on that very first day. I still miss that when, all your colleagues were coming back and you're preparing and, meeting all the new colleagues coming, and then you have the anticipation of students and new students. And you get a little bit of a taste of all of that again. It's not lost forever. You can just dip in there and feel that, and it was always a great feeling. It was always a buzz. So I suppose, it's a bit of an addiction, isn't it? You get a bit of a buzz when you do it.
It's in the blood. Yeah,
It's in the blood.
Absolutely.
It's in the blood. Yeah.
Well, yes, it's something that I've wanted to know more about for a long time, since I met somebody 15 years ago who was a long-term sub. And I just thought, oh, how does one do that? And what's involved? So thank you so much.
Yeah.
How can our listeners follow you if they'd like to learn more about long-term subbing as an international educator? What avenues have you got?
Well, typically I'm not a content creator in terms of my social media presence. It's more my advertising using Canva in as many creative ways as I can to advertise positions, and not all positions are there. But largely I give my email address out very freely, and a lot of my day is taken with answering questions and getting back to people and putting people in touch with other people who can answer their questions. So it's just a free flow of information and guidance. The program is automated. I don't necessarily take everybody, however. I have an appreciation of the qualifications you need to have to get into most countries and to be able to do this, and schools are asking for. So if you start the journey, I'll be in touch with you pretty quickly, and then I'll start up a conversation with you. So it becomes very personalized very quickly. So it's just a matter of going on to the True Teaching site and hitting that login. There is also a button there if you're interested in just the flying squad. A lot of people find the process time-consuming, but I can get an idea of a teacher through the registration process too. If you're not prepared to register, if you're not prepared to provide the information that schools really require, and it's more than just what's on your standard CV. When you're registering with an agency, they've got in mind what a school leader or a school administrator needs to have to make an informed decision. So, if you're not prepared to provide that, if you just want to go with your CV, then you're not going to get that kind of personalised help that someone like myself can offer, because I know what the school leaders come to me for. And part of that registration process is the vetting process. They want to see that, I am introducing them to people who, are worthy of being in their classroom and being in front of their students. So it's something that I take very seriously. So if I get people that will start the process and then say, oh, this takes a long time, I'll say, well, goodbye then, because you have other avenues. I'm really not interested any longer. So you get the feel for people in terms of how committed they truly are. Yeah. If they're prepared to go through the process and do things properly. Yeah.
We mentioned earlier that you're very active on LinkedIn. You have quite a few followers. Maybe you could just share your LinkedIn with us, please.
My LinkedIn profile, True Teaching. They'll just find me at True Teaching, largely. Yeah.
Okay.
And
perfect.
largely, yes, I use it. It's not my first go-to when I'm trying to fill in either a long-term or a short-term placement. It's not my first. I go first to the database because I know those candidates have been vetted, etc. And then the inactive database, I will go through them as well. But then I will go to social media. I have a lot of groups that I'm part of, and LinkedIn I will contact individually. I'll go through the many, because it's important that I find the educator that schools are looking for. I remember the year before, having to look for a violinist who was
Ooh.
both a music teacher and a performer. And I sort of took that fairly seriously. It was for a school in China, and they had a bit of time to wait for the right person. And I found the right person in Serbia.
Nice.
and she was absolutely delightful, and she was just so happy to get her first experience in an international school. So I'll go a long way to find the right people for schools that contact me.
So in your database, if by chance you have a position for beach volleyball coach,
Nice.
that would be me.
Yeah.
And I could potentially go to Phuket or Da Nang for a few months there to help the team.
Oddly enough,
No
David,
problem
I've
there.
never had that. That would be a totally that would be something out of left field, I think. Yeah, that might be perplexing. Yeah, no, I have never had that. But yeah, from time to time, sometimes female PE teachers who are
Ooh, that's me.
yeah, they're actually in short supply. It's just surprising sometimes what you're looking for and how difficult it can be. Female with good background, with good experience, they've not been easy to find.
Well, I've got to interject there, partner. You're staying behind the mic in your life coaching. No getting on any plane
Come
to go
on.
someplace.
I want to go to Herbal.
Sorry.
I want to go to Falklands.
You can't.
You could have gone to Yangon.
Right.
You could have gone to Yangon. I was finding someone there.
Yeah, that's not too
it's
far
not far away.
Between
Just
Yeah.
for a
All
couple
right.
months, David.
Yeah, that was all it was, actually. It was only for 2 months. So there you go.
Let me tie this together.
Okay.
As a counselor, being an active listener, like I just said, I've learned so much. And I'm not even going to begin to go through the list of what people need to think about to become long-term subs. But there's so many options here that come to mind as people look at what do they want to see happen next in their lives. So I hope, well, I don't even need to hope. People, I know you've enjoyed this, and it's been an eye-opener in so many ways. So Nadine, thank you for taking the time. You've got a very busy life there, going through all the information coming at you and all the contacts providing that service. So it means a lot for Audrey and myself, as we have been waiting for this interview opportunity for quite some time.
Good.
So thanks again for joining
That
us.
was really lovely to meet both of you, and I found out a little bit about you and what you're doing. And it's always pleasant to speak to educators who have been in the international sector for quite a while, because I think we all kind of speak the same language. It's a little bit like third culture kids, isn't it?
It's a club.
I think there's third culture teachers.
Yep.
We all just mesh. As soon as we meet each other, it's sort of, yeah, I know you. Yeah. So it's been really lovely to talk to you. Yeah.
Yes, it's been wonderful to meet you. And thank you so much for all the wisdom and advice that you've shared. It's just been phenomenal. So thanks again.
Thank you for joining us today on Educators Going Global.
You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, and all the other usual suspects.
Please subscribe, like us, and leave a review on Apple and Spotify, and let your teaching friends know about us so we can grow our community.
Please reach out at educatorsgoingglobal@gmail.com and join our Facebook group, Educators Going Global, if you have ideas, comments, or wish to share a Going Global story of your own.
You can also find us on Instagram at Educators Going Global.
Please visit our website as well, www.educatorsgoingglobal.com. All our podcast episodes are on there by topic, along with blog posts, Going Global stories, and our ever-growing resource library. For now, this is Audrey
and David,
inviting you to travel,
teach,
and connect with us.